Hello and welcome to Bags of Action. My name is Pete, and this is a 5-minute Bags of Action review of Kong Skull Island from 2017. After the Vietnam War, a team of scientists explores an uncharted island in the Pacific, venturing into the domain of the mighty Kong, and must fight to escape a primal Eden. So this big monster movie was directed by Jordan Vogt-Roberts, who also did things like The Kings of Summer, Cocked and Funny or Die. So a bit like the Russo brothers, has kind of moved across from more comedy things into big blockbuster action. The story was written by John Gattins, who also wrote Real Steel and Power Rangers. And 3 people worked on the actual screenplay. Derek Connolly, who wrote Jurassic World, Monster Trucks, Detective Pikachu, and wrote the story for Rise of the Skywalker. The screenplay was also written by Max Borenstein, who wrote Minority Report TV series, the story for Godzilla King of Monsters, the screenplay for Godzilla vs. Kong, so he's very much in this monsterverse world, and also TV series The Terror. And then the final writer was Dan Gilroy, who wrote Nightcrawler, another person who also is involved with Real Steel, The Bourne Legacy, and most recently Velvet Buzzsaw. There's a great cast in this. So you've got the Marvel trio of Samuel L. Jackson, Brie Larson, Tom Hiddleston. You've got other heavyweights like John C. Reilly and John Goodman. And alongside them, some other character actors, people like Corey Hawkins from Six Underground, The Walking Dead, 24 Legacy, and Straight Outta Compton. John Ortiz from Ad Astra, Bumblebee and Peppermint. Shea Wiggum, one of those character actors that I always like, I recognise him, but what from? And he's been in Joker, Sicario 2, and also Wheelman. Toby Kebbell is in this from Bloodshot, some of the Planet of the Apes movies, The Fantastic Four, where he was Doctor Doom, and Dead Man's Shoes, which is the first thing I saw him in. And he plays one of the soldiers in this, but also the motion capture for, or performance capture for Kong himself. Jason Mitchell is in this from The Mustang, Keanu, Dragon Eyes, and also Straight Outta Compton, and Tian Jing from The Great Wall and Pacific Rim Uprising. In fact, the cast on this is nearing 100, so I won't keep going, but it's a large cast, and with good reason. So I went into this second Monsterverse movie only really knowing that Kong was in it, and that, it felt like it was going to be maybe something similar but more modern than the Peter Jackson version. So the quality cast took me by surprise. I also had no idea it was set in 1973 either, and that was a big positive for me. The 70s feel, from the music to the vehicles, the helicopters, the overall aesthetic really set it apart from other blockbusters, and that made me very excited from early on. There's even like an Apocalypse Now meets Predator vibe at times, which is a big thumbs up from me. So we get to see the organisation Monarch again, as we did in Godzilla, but much earlier in their development. So going in knowing so little, I was on board from the first few minutes. And a bit differently from Godzilla, I stayed along for the ride throughout. The cast being so strong and the aesthetic being so well developed made this movie extremely immersive, and I was fully invested from the get-go. Now, one thing that I rarely talk about when reviewing an action movie is the camera work and the choice of shots and angles. It's the kind of thing that sets apart directors like Tarantino, Scorsese, Eastwood and Fincher, but it isn't that prevalent in widescreen summer action. Now, in this movie, they play with scale a lot. We get to see things from high or low angles, from looking between things. The camera rarely uses the most obvious vantage point, but not in a showing off way, in a way that really helps set the scene and build the tension. Those choices, I have to say, blew me away. For something that potentially is a B movie, to make such clever cinematography choices, it really, really impressed me. Now, a friend of mine described this film as being nestled somewhere between the high bar of Tremors and Anaconda as a B-movie piece of monster fun. Now, I'd say this is a long way ahead of Anaconda, which I found relatively forgetful, but it does, and it scratches a different itch to Tremors, really. But Tremors, admittedly, is a film that I adore. Now, this was a big budget, full-on film with a strong cast, really good performances. I think maybe only Hiddleston and Larson seemed a little bit one note, but for example, Jackson and Reilly were exceptional. There's a pulp vibe, secret organisation intrigue, a giant ape, brilliant set pieces and some strong character moments. What is there not to like? So outside of the Marvel movies, this is probably the big blockbuster movie that I've enjoyed most since Real Steel. So it was interesting that two of the writers also worked on that film. It even has a post-credits scene. Now, I really wish I'd seen Kong Skull Island on the big screen, and I'm pretty sure once I catch up on the rest of the Monsterverse, I'll be doubling back to give this another watch. I was blown away by how good this was. I have to say, to me, this is perfect popcorn fodder, and if you go into it with the right mindset, I think it'd be very hard not to enjoy it. As I say, they've kind of thrown a great cast and some really clever directing at what could have just been a silly throwaway movie. So, all things considered, now I really struggle with this because we don't do half bags, but I can't quite give Kong Skull Island 5 bags of action. Just because of some of the other action movie classics that have had a 5 in the past, I think it would be wrong to put it quite at that level. But I'll be honest with you, it's close. This is a film I will keep going back to. So I'm going to give Kong Skull Island a very, very respectable 4 bags of action out of 5. Have you seen Kong Skull Island and the rest of the Monsterverse movies? Do you agree with my assessment of it? Feel free to comment below or get in touch with us. You can do that on email, Facebook or on Twitter. We have new episodes coming out weekly, including our full-length podcast. Don't forget to give the video a like and subscribe to the channel and hit that bell to get notifications whenever we put out a new episode. Bags of Action will always be free, but if you'd like to buy us a coffee, you can do that at our Ko-fi page.